morning you call. But no news ain't good news. For me, it's been that way. I hear the rabbit foot's lucky, but I wonder what the rabbit would say. I don't knock on hardwood, it wouldn't change a thing. Nothing works, I can't stop.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers found sometime last week has been inspected in Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
The views, opinions, and representations expressed on the K-Ghost Radio Network and its website are those of the host, guest, and participants, and they are not necessarily those of or endorsed by the network, its affiliated stations and broadcast, management, or advertisers of the network. The show is found under LJA Broadcasting Network. UFO Talk Radio can, but does not necessarily promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and they are not intended to treat or diagnose and or claim to cure any disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice. All music is purchased and owned by LJA Broadcasting.
Some fun right along with us, broadcasting live deep from the desert of Nevada. Welcome to the Glenn Leary Show. Now, broadcasting live from deep in the desert of Nevada, K-Ghost Radio presents UFOTalkRadio.com with your host, Larry Glenn Anderson, Glenn Larry.
Welcome, everybody. This is Glenn Larry. And to all my fans and friends out there, listeners from all over the world, broadcasters, we are broadcasting deep from the desert of Nevada. Oh, yes. And to my fellows out there, I thank you so very kindly, small broadcasters again, and shortwave broadcasters, ham operators, 73s to you, KBHR 57, Cisco, Alaska. We say hello to you also. Thank you kindly for carrying the broadcast. Great people up there. KPFF and from Nevada, we thank you also. As I say, all the broadcasters, we thank you. And LG Broadcasting thanks you once again. And we're going to have a great show tonight, as I advertised and told all you folks. Going to have a guy named Terry Lovelace on. Yeah. And you've heard about that guy. I mean, this guy has quite a story, and it's all true, and it's incredible. I've had several people talk about UFOs on the show before, of course, as you all know. Our show is more or less based on that. But we have had some pretty wacky stuff been said. Yes, of course, nutty stuff. But what is nutty about it? What isn't true? I mean, I have a guy from MUFON calls, says to me, Larry, I have to hear the story. And it's not that I believe it, it's what they believe must be said. And when it's said, it's said. And either you take it or leave it. And that's the way I'll leave it with you. But I'll tell you this guy's story, I believe. And of course, also Travis Walton's story, I believe. And there's a couple other guys that aren't with us right now, but I believe their story too. But from Bigfoot to UFO, paranormal, you've had it all here on this station. You've heard it on other stations. But what makes it unique about our station? We really care about it. Yes, we do. We're going to go into a little short PSA here, and I shall be right back. Stay tuned with our good friend coming on, Terry.
Every day, people are afraid to report violent crimes. In times like these, choosing to report a crime or helping the police can be a difficult decision. A no-snitching culture has sprung up in our communities, making it unpopular and sometimes even dangerous to report a crime. Do the right thing by calling 911 or your local crime tip line. If you're the victim of a crime, report it. If you know about a crime, report it. To learn more about how to do the right thing, visit ncpc.org or contact your local law enforcement agency.
A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
Mom, you wanted to talk to me?
The calendar hypnosis into thumbtack cushion, completely tailwind. And sewing elephants plant before cartoon paper cups. So numbers renovate.
If your teenager is trying drugs or alcohol, would you know the right words to use?
Afterward, lightly fish scale. Doorbell.
Find out what to say at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
As you know, the UFO reports have been climbing. Sights of UFOs have been seen all over the world. We live in an age where things are so much different, my gosh. And here we are with a gentleman that experienced it on what has changed his life. He has a book out called Devil's Den. And I'm telling you, my special guest on my show, I'm privileged to have him. Terry Lovelace, how are you? Are you with me, buddy?
I'm right here and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, Terry. You know, I'm going to let you just kind of open the show. I kind of said some things, but the 1977 abduction, alien abduction you had, and also the implant that you had, and the experience you had. How did it all happen? What was your first step into this whole new world of yours?
Well, let me give you a little bit of my bio.
Good. Let's do that.
It'll make more sense and a timeline.
Yeah.
Actually,
please.
I graduated from high school in 1973, and I joined the United States Air Force on a 6-year enlistment with the idea of securing a GI Bill to go to college. And I was active duty Air Force from 1973 to 1979. My enlistment ended in 79. I finished a bachelor's degree in psychology and then a law degree from Western Michigan, passed the Michigan bar, and practiced law for a living in private practice at first. Then I was appointed as an assistant attorney general to the United States Territory of American Samoa. Beautiful place, beautiful people, and I enjoyed it immensely. And from there, I went to the state of Vermont, where I was state's attorney for their board of medical practice. And I retired from the law in 2012. And my wife and I moved from Vermont down to Dallas to be near our kids and grandkids. So here we are.
Fantastic.
And I waited until retirement to write this book or tell this story, because I can tell you that within the legal community, my peers, my colleagues, my friends, would have turned on me in a heartbeat. I have no doubt about it. I mean, there's just some professions.
Have you heard from your fellow folks like that? Have you heard from them at all since the book?
Yeah, I did. And it's been a mixed bag of reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some good friends call me and say, "Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? Are you writing science fiction?" Mm-hmm. I'm like, "No, pal, this isn't fiction." Yeah. But I've had other people write to me and say, it's courageous that you came out.
Yes.
And told the world about it. So, yeah, it's been a mixed bag, but it's been worth it. And, I may have lost a few friends in the legal community, but, I really don't care. Because I'll tell you, I discovered in 2018 when I published Incident at Devil's Den, mm-hmm. that there's a very vibrant, alive UFO culture, community, whatever you want to call it. There's just some really good people.
Yes.
Involved in this, and I've made great friendships. And
you make more too. I'm quite sure of that.
Yes.
I've. Well, with that.
My event started in 1977.
There you go.
Yeah, and what we did was
the year Elvis died, by the way.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I was out of high school in 75. But hey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just thinking, I thought he died in the 80s. You know,
Yeah. He's still alive.
He's still alive. Yeah. I heard that too.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was trained as a medic and an EMT in the Air Force, and I worked in the emergency room as a first responder. And I worked with a good friend of mine by the name of Tobias, and we worked together for about 3 years. We worked the night shift. I was taking some classes. There was a extension. They taught college classes on base from Park College. So I got to rack up some credits there against my degree. And working the night shift worked fine because I could go to class in the evening, then go to work, and then if we weren't busy, I could work on homework. Or Toby, if we weren't busy, Toby and I just play cards, and not a lot of officers around. It was a good gig. We enjoyed ourselves. And one night he came to me in April of 1977 and said, "Hey man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And I said, "What?" I'm a city kid, Missouri. I knew he was a city kid from Flint, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
I knew that I'd never been camping, and I was pretty sure he'd never been camping. And I'm like, what's up with this?
Right.
And he says, "Well, listen, your hobby is photography," and that's true. I had a little dark room set up. We were both NCOs, and we lived on the base.
Right.
And Whiteman was, and still is, a nuclear base. So when photography is your hobby, there's not much you can do with a camera when you live on a nuclear base.
No.
So
not much you can take up.
Nah, walking around with a camera is just kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
He had the idea, let's go to this place called Devil's Den, and he wanted to go just so he could watch the night sky without light pollution.
Uh-huh.
He was just an amateur astronomer, just ate up with the idea of watching the stars.
Wow.
And he could name constellations. He could time when a satellite was going to come over. He was a kid. And I was 22 at the time. He was 23.
Mm-hmm.
And, we packed a cooler and packed some stuff and made the 6.5-hour drive south to Devil's Den State Park, just on the other side of the Arkansas border. And found the park. And we had agreed on the ride down that we would not stay in the campground.
Right.
Because and he made a good point. Toby said, "Look, we're going to have people to the right of us, people to the left of us. There'll be, children and other undesirables running around, and we don't need that. Let's be real outdoorsmen here. Let's go find our own spot."
Right.
So, we did. We took a paved road until it turned to gravel, until it turned to dirt, and we came to a chain across the road. And I'm like, "Oh man, I'll turn around." And there was a very sternly worded sign that said, "Absolutely no admittance, do not enter, no hunting, no fishing, no camping, that kind of thing." And we thought it might be a nature preserve, is what we thought.
Right.
We found out later that it's owned by the Bureau of Land Management and still is today.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not even in the park.
Wow.
So I was going to turn the car around. My friend says, "No, wait a minute, man, I got this." And he hops out of the car, and what the park rangers had done was to take the chain and loop it around itself with a padlock, and they just had draped the chain on the post on the opposing side of the road,
right,
on a nail. So I guess they didn't want to take the time to hunt for keys. They just lift it up and drop it whenever they wanted to come in.
It looked like
my friend did the same. He lifted it up and fell right to the road, and we drove in, and we felt like Lewis and Clark. We were like, this was great.
Mm.
So we drove, and my friend gave directions. I don't know how we found this because you can't see it. There's this plateau,
right,
and it's still there today, and it's level with the tops of trees. So unless you're right up on it, you can't see it. And we stumbled right onto it.
Right.
And I wonder if that was a mistake. The whole thing had a feeling like we were keeping an appointment, to be honest with you.
Ooh.
And we drove up the steep incline, got to the top of the plateau, and it opened up in front of us, and we were just high five. It was just absolutely a gorgeous place.
Right.
It was just grass and late blooming wildflowers, and just a very nice place to camp. And we set up our little campsite on the edge by the tree line, and we did all the fun stuff you do in camping. Of course, this was all new to us. So we had an interesting day and a fun day. And by 9 o'clock that evening, we'd eaten some hot dogs and we're kicked back on these inflatable air mattresses with the fire between us. And we're talking and just kind of reason and laughing and carrying on. And there's a lull in our conversation. And I know that this sounds cliche because, it sounds like it's a line out of a movie, but it's true. And other people have told me they've experienced this too. And that was that the forest went completely silent.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Abruptly silent.
Yep.
And the crickets, the tree frogs,
Been there.
the things that, you've been there.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And
It's like time stops. It's weird.
It was very weird. We also lost. We'd had a nice breeze,
Mm-hmm.
and it was June. It was hot, and the breeze stopped.
Hmm.
And it was just dead still. The only thing there was still our campfire.
Yeah.
But that was it, and it unnerved me. It really did, and it didn't faze my buddy. He's like, no worries. This is just this is normal. We just quieted them. We were being loud and we quieted them, and they'll be back. Don't worry about the bugs.
Right.
So I tried not to, and we carried on some conversation, and then he fixated on something over his left shoulder, which would have been the western horizon. And I'm about to ask him, hey, what are you looking at? When he asked me, he says, hey, Terry, were these lights there before? And I knew there were no lights anywhere in the horizon. I mean, the only thing we could see on the eastern horizon, there was a very dim glow.
Right.
And that was from the campsite that was miles away.
Huh.
But other than that, we were in a remote area. There was nothing out there. And I had to stand up because his torso was in the way. So I had to stand up and take a step back.
Right.
And on the horizon, I could see this tight little triangle of 3 stars.
Right.
They were all about the same brightness.
Mm-hmm.
And they were too far above the horizon to have been lights like from a parking lot or a train or something. But they were absolutely still.
Huh.
And I told my buddy, I said, I bet that's a plane, even though we debated, we didn't know of any planes that had that kind of tri-light configuration in the front.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, that could be a plane and it's headed right at us. So until it deviates its course by a degree or two,
right,
it's going to give us the illusion of standing still.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, that's probably right. That's probably right. So we're watching this thing, and these 3 stars rotated like they were on an axis.
Ooh.
And shocked us. And they rotated about 120 degrees to the right, and this triangle aligned the base of the triangle parallel with the horizon. And then almost immediately started to ascend and go straight up. So we saw the 3 lights climbing straight up. And as soon as this happened, I felt this wave of calm wash over me. And, our reactions to this were muted. I mean, we should have been something. We should have been freaked out. We should have been concerned or frightened.
Right.
But all that uneasiness that I felt earlier about the silence, that was all gone, and I just felt very calm and really almost disinterested, kind of like I was an observer more than a participant. And my friend was in the same frame of mind, and I think that this really speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over us.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pretty powerful stuff they got going. I mean, that's.
I'll say.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No. Okay.
So here you guys are. You're hit with this realm of good feeling, and so you're saying, hey, those lights are okay to look at, okay to see. What's going through your mind?
What's going through my mind is not what are these things? This thing could be headed in our direction. Let's get in the car and get out of here. There was none of that. it was just, I was just mesmerized staring at this thing.
Yeah, hypnotized
And
almost.
I felt very satisfied.
Wow.
Is the right term. So yeah, I don't get it, but that's the place that I was in. So we watched this thing climb up into the sky, and it reached what I call a ceiling, probably about 10,000 feet, I'm guessing. And then it leveled out where it was parallel, where it had been rising vertically. It leveled out, and then the nose of it, the apex, the point of the triangle, dipped down in our direction, and this thing started a slow glide plane toward us. And here's where we should have been concerned or
ready to halt.
nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Oh my gosh.
And we're watching this thing, and as it's coming down, it did this thing where the point of the triangle would dip underneath, and it would do a complete somersault, and it did that twice. And I had the impression that they did that for us. That was their way of saying, look, this isn't out of control. You know, we're operating this thing with intent, with purpose. And I don't know where that came from, but that's my impression. So,
what was your buddy doing? What was your buddy doing next to you at this time? Just looking up,
Yeah, same as me.
Was he saying anything to you at all?
I remember him saying, they're really moving now, whenever it first started to ascend into the sky. And I honestly, I don't think there were 4 or 5 words said between us. I do not. Not that I can remember.
Right.
Because there was a question in the beginning: are we looking at one solid object here, or is this 3 objects working in unison or orchestrated somehow?
Right.
And as we're watching, as it crosses fields of stars, they would blink out for a moment and then blink back when it had passed. And plus, there were a trillion stars up that night, and the sky was a deep blue, and the area inside this triangle was jet black. So we figured out, as it got bigger, that it was one solid object. And it reached the point on what looked like on the horizon near us, I'm guessing at about 5,000 feet. That would be 5,000 feet above the top of the plateau where we were camped. And then it dropped as it kind of cruised in and leveled off at about 3,000 feet and parked right over this plateau. And it was absolutely enormous. And it was, as I described, a city block in length on each leg of the triangle. And the lights, when it got low, when it got to 5,000 feet or lower, it dimmed those lights on the points of the triangle somewhat. So they were much dimmer.
And at this time, is it right over you?
No, we are offset.
Okay.
So we're camped by the tree line,
right.
And this thing eats up the entire auto.
Oh, gotcha.
So thankfully, it's not hanging over our head. We are off to the side a bit. And at 3,000 feet, we really couldn't see much of it except for the underside, which was just matte black.
Yes.
And shortly after it stopped, from the center of the triangle underneath, there came this beam of light, and it was a white light, a light. You know how a searchlight, high power searchlight cutting through fog, makes a column of white light.
Right.
That's what this was like, but there was no fog, of course. There was just this column of visible white light. And it clicked on like someone had hit a switch, and that light was about 6 inches in diameter. It was a column, and it landed square in the middle of our campfire. And we could trace it with our eyes, the white line going all the way back up to the ship.
Wow.
And we just looked at one another and looked at it, and it only stayed there for 60 seconds, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
And then again, like someone hits a switch, it turns off. And then instead, there came this a laser beam. And I had seen, 1977, I'd seen lasers on TV, but I had never seen one in real life.
Right.
And this was a beam about the diameter of a pencil.
Wow.
And it would land. It's very bright, and it was a weird color. It was a blue violet color, and it would land in a spot in the campground and stay there for literally a tenth of a second, and then reappear somewhere else. So that with each second, this thing had danced around 10 different spots on the campground. So it gave the illusion it's just dancing all over the place. And it struck me in the chest 3 or 4 times. I never felt a thing. I know it hit my buddy. And it's hitting the stuff that us, and it's hitting the stuff that we brought.
Oh.
You know, it hit my car.
It's memorizing what's it's there. When they do take you, they're going to return you back to the right stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm getting it.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and I had that thought. This thing's scanning us. It's checking us out.
Exactly.
And that didn't scare me. That didn't scare me at all. I still had that calm feeling, and that lasted maybe 3 minutes. And then that turned off, and then we were just sitting there in silence. And we sat like that for a couple of minutes, and then that sedated feeling that we had transitioned into something more like sleepy. And I was suddenly just, all I wanted to do was lay my head down and go to sleep. And that was unusual because, you know, I was 22 years old, best shape of my life. Granted, I just drove 6.5 hours earlier in the day, and, you know, we did a hike and we did some, you know, but I shouldn't have been sleepy. You know, 22-year-olds in that situation, especially when you're used to working the night shift, you know, 10 o'clock at night is nothing.
Right.
It was odd to have that sleepiness hit me, but it was overwhelming. And my friend was, you know, he had the same thing going on because he picked up his air mattress and he made it to the tent before I did and threw his air mattress in and fell on top of it. And I stood up, picked up my air mattress, and I did the same. Now, this is with this thing 3,000 feet over us. Not directly over us, but it's right over us. And I didn't undress. I didn't take off my shirt. I was wearing my combat boots. I didn't unlace them, take them off. I just threw my air mattress into the tent, and I fell on top of it. And the second my head hit that inflated, you know, pillow, I was out. And I don't think I was asleep. I think I was unconscious. And that's when they came and they took us while we were unconscious, asleep, or whatever you want to call it.
What they do. Think what they do.
Both of our watches had stopped at 2:40. We wore nice mechanical wind-up watches, kind of the standard of the day. And they were integral to the job of being an EMT. We both needed them, and we needed them to read the same time because we had to write reports from ambulance runs and the like. So both of my watch stopped at 2:40, and it was a nice Elgin watch, and Toby's stopped at 2:41. And I wish I'd saved that watch. It never worked again.
Yeah, I would have kept it forever.
I should have. So I woke up. We were able to calculate backward that it was probably about an hour before dawn. I woke up with this flashing of bright lights that came through the canvas of the tent. And, you know, they lit up that tent like a ballpark at night. It was just incredible, you know, but just very, very brief millisecond flashes of light. And they were white and yellow and orangish. And I saw these lights, and I wake up, and I don't have my wits about me. And I'm thinking, where am I? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, Toby and I went camping. That's right. And I see these lights, and I'm trying to think of some kind of logical explanation for them. And I thought, oh, this must be like a park ranger's, you know, the overhead flashing lights of a park ranger's truck. They're here to kick us off the trespass. No big deal.
Yeah, I've done that before.
So, yeah, you know, you're 22. It isn't the crime of the century. But then I heard this mechanical noise. It sounded like if you've ever been next to a big piece of industrial machinery, or maybe like a diesel train engine that's on idle. You know, there's noise, but it's not loud to your ears, but it's powerful. You can feel it in your chest.
It's a humming type of feeling, type of
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call it a droning.
There you go.
For lack of a better term.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done.
So I'm thinking, well, is this park ranger running a generator in the back of his truck? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And then I looked down, and in one of these flashes of light, I saw that my boots had been unlaced almost all the way down. Now, I knew I did not go to bed like that. I would not have gone to bed like that. I may have taken them off.
Right?
Or,
Right.
But I knew they were laced up tight. I mean, that's a trip hazard. I mean, if you had to get out of there in a hurry, I mean, how are you going to do that with, shoe lace place?
Right.
So that annoyed me. I wasn't scared yet. It annoyed me. And I pulled off my boot, and I noticed my sock was on sideways. And the same with the other foot. My sock was on sideways. And that really confused me, because I could not imagine how that happened.
I don't think they can dress us very well.
I don't think so either.
That's what I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Man. And that thought didn't cross my mind at the time.
Right. Of course not.
So
You're trying to put it all together.
Yeah, you try to make sense of stuff. You try to put it into some put it into some kind of scenario that makes sense, some kind of narrative you can understand.
Right.
And I look over at my buddy here, and he is on his knees, and he's peeking through the flap of the tent on his side. It's a little bitty two-man tent.
Yeah.
And I got my boots up, and I said, Toby, man, what is it? What's out there? Is it a park ranger? What's out there? And he turned to me with the universal finger across the lips thing, and he said, be quiet, they're still out there. And I'm like, who's still out there? And then in one of these flashes of light, I could see on the right side of his face, because I guess, a bright white light will fluoresce the saline in your tears.
Mm-hmm.
I could see a track of tears running down the right side of his face.
Geez.
Now that got me concerned.
Right.
Because I could not imagine what would make this man cry.
Right.
I'd worked with him for 3 years. I'd never seen him cry before.
Right.
So he wasn't going to answer me about what's out there. And I got to my knees, and I pulled back the flap on my side of the tent, and I look out expecting to see park rangers. What I saw.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on, please. Right at the point where, gosh, do this. I'm sorry. Terry, hang on, buddy. Hang on, folks. What a story. My gosh. Be back after this. And we are back, everybody, with Terry Lovelace. And we're going to back up that story a little bit. Right as he was finding out his boots were untied, socks were put on wrong, and his buddy's looking outside the tent, and you saw the tears on his cheek. And take her from there, buddy.
Sure. I got to my knees because he wasn't going to answer me. And I pulled back my flap of the tent, fully expecting to see park rangers outside. And what I saw, which is crazy, this thing that had been 3,000 feet over the meadow when we went to sleep had descended, and it's now 30 feet over the meadow. And because we're offset, we can see, of course, we can only see one side of it because it's a triangle. We saw one long side. And like I said, it was a city block in length on each leg of the triangle. And we could see that it was not only big lengthwise, it was deep.
Yeah.
And it was lit up like crazy. And I cannot understand to this day how this thing wasn't seen in 5 counties. And I then I got scared. And the second thing that I saw was in these flashes of light, I saw what I took to be a bunch of kids. And I'm looking, and there's like a dozen, maybe 15. I didn't count them. What looked like children walking around underneath this thing. And I asked my friend, I said, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere? And that's when he said to me, he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And don't you remember, they took us and they hurt us. And when he said those words, I was scared to death, absolutely scared to death. And I had flashes of memory of being inside this thing. Now, I've never had a clear linear memory of everything that happened to us, not by a long shot, but I had flashes of memory come back to me. And I've also had, nightmares for 45 years or 43 years, whatever it's been now, 43,
right.
I think. And in those nightmares, I relived parts of the abduction. I have no idea how they got us on board that thing.
Well,
but
you have a feeling, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
They can take anybody out of anywhere at any time. That's what they do. And through walls, through roofs, cement, they've got a way. I mean, it's not a tall ladder. I'm telling you, it's done. That's the way they do things. And many reports like that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I look at these things a little closer. And I mean, they're a fair distance away, but I can still see them. They're gray. I can't tell if they're wearing gray garments or if those are a uniform of some kind. And they're all paired up into 2s and some are in 3s. And they walk with a very distinctive gait. They walk like their knees were hinged to move backward maybe an inch or 2 with each step. So it kind of gave the impression they were dragging their foot behind them as they tried to move forward. It was weird to see.
Yeah.
But they all had this distinctive gait.
Yeah.
And while we're watching, we're scared to death. We're going to sneeze or cough or do something to draw their attention. And they're going to come over and we had no way of knowing. They were long done with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while we're watching them, holding our breath, just scared to death, this light popped on underneath this thing again. And this was it had that same visible quality of a, searchlight cutting through fog.
Correct.
White light.
Uh-huh.
So this white light kicks on, and I'm guessing it's about as wide as this thing is tall off the floor of the meadow. So it's about 30 feet off the meadow, and this column of white light is about 30 feet in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as this thing kicked on, all of these little guys turned their attention toward it and started to amble over in its direction. And they didn't hurry, they didn't run. They just started heading that way. And while we're watching, the first little guys, they were like waiting for their turn. Two little guys went into the light, and over about a span of about 20 seconds, they just pixelated out, and they were gone.
Wow.
It looked very much like the old Star Trek thing. I'm not a sci-fi fan. My wife watched it. I didn't care.
Beam me up. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And we watched as they disappeared, one group after another, until the last 2 little guys were gone. And as soon as they were gone, that light turned off. And that droning noise that we'd heard, that had now become like the bass line, so we didn't even notice it anymore. That noise stopped. And when it stopped, then we got another dose of how quiet it was out there. So this thing wasn't making any noise at all now.
Did it disappear? Did the ship just vanish?
No, you know what it did? It took off. It didn't take off like a rocket ship. It just lifted off like a hot air balloon.
Yeah. Like it
And
was
it
no,
just,
yeah.
it rotated a few degrees to the right, and it just went straight up. And it changed the color. The lights have been different colors on the points of the triangle, and they switched to all white. And if you want to see a picture of it, if you go to my website, terrylovelace.com, you can see a drawing that I did contemporaneous with the event. I drew that. I actually drew it on some notebook paper as soon as I got home. And then I redrew that with a ruler and a little more attention to detail sometime later.
I think I saw that. Very well done.
Yeah, good representation of what we saw. And if you look on the ground on the left, you'll see two tiny little figures in a tent and a car.
Yeah.
And I did that to kind of give some kind of reference to how big this thing was. I'm not sure how accurate it is.
Now I noticed that you had a couple beams in the windows. Did you see them too as they took off?
You know, I can't say that we saw beams. I can say that we saw shadows and movement.
All right.
Along the very top of this thing, there was like an observation deck or something. It was like one long pane of glass, and this thing was lit up like crazy on the inside. So it was pouring out light like mad. And we could see movement in back of those windows. Now, there were other windows throughout the thing that were lit here and there, kind of like, kind of like if you drive through, downtown Dallas at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to see some office buildings that have lights on. And
people walking by.
Most are going to be unlit, but some are going to be here and there. There's going to be an office lit up, and that's what this is like.
Wow.
And we watched this thing rise, and it became just 3 points of light, and then 1 point of light, and then it was gone.
What did you guys after that? Did you pack up and run, or did you just pick up and go home?
Well, what we did was we sat there really like two scared 10-year-olds.
Well, I would have been
we
too.
Really did.
I would have been too.
And I told my friend, I said, look, we don't know. We know it's sometime after 2:40. That's all we know. I said, I'm not leaving this tent until it's daytime.
There you go.
And my friend said, no, let's get out of here now.
Okay.
He said, they're gone. Let's get out of here. And we kind of argued it back and forth. And I think he was right. I think that was the right thing to do. I grabbed my wallet and my keys. He grabbed the flashlight, and he had his wallet, I know. And we did the 1, 2, 3, go thing. And, I really felt vulnerable in that 60
I bet you did.
Ran to the car.
Yeah. They could get us again. Yeah.
And, to this day, I can't walk across an open expanse. I got like an open big field or something. I can't do that. I'll have a panic attack. I'll walk a mile and a half, around, but I won't cut across and be out in the open.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So.
Well, now, okay, we got that story on the, this was in the National Forest, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were in Devil's Den, which is a state park.
State park, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there's a major highway, which I forget the name of right now, but on one side, on the west side, it's Devil's Den State Park, which is an Arkansas state park. And then on the other side is the Ozark National Forest.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay, good.
So we left all our stuff there. We left the tent, his backpack, Toby's backpack, and that backpack, I should mention, Toby had a camera inside that backpack that was a foot away from him. I mean, it was sitting right next to him. And the thought of taking a picture of this thing never crossed our minds.
And that happens all the time. I've heard it from everybody. I just didn't think to grab my camera. My gosh. Yeah.
And again, I think it speaks to the control they have over us.
They could have blocked it off anyway. I've heard people have had cameras on and it didn't work anyway.
I've heard that too. Or they get
batteries dead.
Just blurry black images.
Yeah. Crazy. So did you let the press know right away? Did you call the cops, or what'd you guys do? You quiet about it for a while?
What we did was we were both hurt.
Yeah.
We were both burned.
Right.
I had the worst sunburn I've ever had in my life, except I never peeled and I never blistered. But what's insane was I had sunburn everywhere. Under my arms, the soles of my feet, my scalp, everywhere. I'm sunburned. and it's uniform. And then I had this. Oh my God, we were so thirsty. We were acutely dehydrated.
Yeah.
Never been so thirsty in all my life.
Right.
And the third thing we had was, and I was driving. I felt like I had an eyelash in each eye, and I kept blinking. And then the sun came up, and then it felt like I had sand in my eyes. I found out when we got to the hospital, we both had what they call flash burn to the eyes.
Right.
And it's, like an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood.
Right.
When they're using acetylene. So we made a pact. We made an agreement that we would not tell the Air Force because we knew we were going to have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And that was awkward because the hospital was our home. We were members of the hospital squadron. We worked in the ER.
Right. Yeah, but you're government property at this point, and they're going to ask you what happened to you. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. Well said. And we knew that if we told these guys, "Oh my God, you should have seen it. It was unbelievable. As big as the office medical building," or they'd have shipped us out for a psych eval.
Yeah. And
they would have, and they'd have got rid of us. I mean, it'd been the end of. It had been a career ender for sure.
Yes.
Of
course, it would have been.
We agreed not to say that under any circumstances. But we were ethical about it at the same time. We didn't want to lie.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend said, "Look, we don't have to lie. We can tell the truth." We felt funny, strange, and went to bed and woke up sick as dogs and decided to come home. And we didn't care about a $10 Kmart tent. We just wanted to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And we just left out the part about seeing a UFO. And that was our story that we stuck with. So it was a weird thing. And I've had people email me. I put an email address in the epilogue of Incident at Devil's Den. And I said, "Look, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but if you had some kind of experience similar to what you just read that I had, send me an email and tell me about it. And I'll answer every email." And I did. And I thought, maybe I'll get 100 emails. I got over 1,600 emails as of this morning.
You betcha. Wow.
And I had other people tell me this too. I think human nature is when two human beings go through something like this, something on this level of intensity and anxiety, and
mm-hmm.
I think it's human nature that as soon as the threat is passed,
mm-hmm.
to debrief, to talk about it, and say, "Oh my God, did you see what I saw?" And validate each other's experience. I think that's human nature.
Well, I shall share with you off the air. I shall share with that little story with you later on. But
resonate?
You'll understand. Yeah. So, but go ahead now. So after that, when did you find out that you had some implants in your leg or in your knee or what have you?
2012.
On 2012, okay.
2012.
And that was
a game changer for me.
Yeah.
I retired from the state of Vermont in January of 2012.
Uh-huh.
And we moved to Dallas to be with our kids and grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up one morning and I couldn't bear weight on my right leg.
Right.
My knee hurt
mm-hmm.
really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I get all my medical care from the VA. I told my wife, take me to the hospital. There's something wrong with my leg here. So she did. And I waited my turn and saw a physician's assistant who seemed, courteous and knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, this was October, about 9 months after I'd retired. And she got me in the x-ray room. The technician took over, and she took 2 shots of my leg, one from front to back, and then the other with my leg bent and sideways.
Mm-hmm.
So a side view and a
right.
front view.
Right.
And she took the films and then comes over and gets kind of perplexed and says, "I'm going to take 2 more." So she took 2 more.
Mm.
And then she asked me, have you been in an accident or suffer a shrapnel wound or something? So it's something that accounts for the thing in your leg. And I'm like, no, I mean, other than a skinned knee as a kid, I've never had an injury to that leg. And she says, well, you have some anomalies on the film, and I've asked the radiologist to come down and take a look. So we wait there a couple of minutes, and a very perturbed radiologist walks in, and you could tell he wasn't happy about being called down. And he walks over and he pops up an X-ray on the view box, and he walks over to me and says something to the effect, "Young man, I bet you got a scar right here," and he pokes me in the knee. Now, what's crazy is I should back up just a little bit because this will make more sense. In 1979, when I got out of the Air Force, I started running because, being a full-time student, I was gaining weight.
Need exercise.
Yeah,
I get it.
And I liked it. I liked running. So I ran
I did too.
for 40 years, and well, almost. But the weird thing is that every time I ran, every single run from 1979 forward, when I would hit about the 2-mile mark in my run, I mean, give or take 50 yards. But when I'd hit that 2-mile mark, there was a spot above my right knee and kind of lateral to the right that would go completely numb. And I had a safety pin with me one day. And at the end of and it would fade away after about 30 minutes after my run. And I took the safety pin and I opened it, and I could trace the outline of this thing because it felt numb and kind of itchy, very much like a Novocaine in your mouth kind of sensation. And I could delineate its edges, and this thing was perfectly round and about the size of a $50. And then it would fade. So when this radiologist now in 2012 pops this X-ray up on the view box and points this thing out to me, I can see in an instant that it lay directly underneath that spot on my leg that went numb. And that was tough. That was a tough moment because that validated for me that these things had put their hands on me. I mean, I knew that they had, but this was proof. And it was overwhelming to me. And he showed me the image, the thing above my knee, and it looks like electrical, like an RIFD chip or something.
Right.
It's a square structure about the size of a fingernail with 2 wires attached to it that run up my leg. And he said, you have to have a scar. You have to have been in some kind of accident to get this electronic device in your leg. It's what it looks like. It looks like a piece of electronics. And I'm like, can you show me what you're talking?
Yeah.
And you don't need a medical degree to see this thing. It's clear as day. It's a square structure with 2 wires attached to it.
Gosh.
And he said, well, you should have a scar. He said, there's no way to get this thing in your leg at this depth without, you violate the integrity of the skin and you jam this thing in your knee.
Yeah, it's got to be there.
Have a scar.
Right.
But I don't have a scar.
No scar.
And that upset him.
Yeah.
And then he said, and there's more. He said, you've got some bones in your lower leg. And I'm like, well, I'm supposed to, right? And he says, no, let me show you. And he popped up the second X-ray, and that's the side view of my leg. And from the side view, you can see what looks like a floret pattern with a little dot in the middle of bone tissue right in the middle of my calf muscle.
Right.
And I being an EMT, I knew a little bit about human anatomy, and I knew that was. And I said, Doc, what is that? What are those? And he says, well, I can tell. I can tell that on X-ray film, these are the density of bone tissue. So whatever it is, it's bone tissue. But he said, I've been a radiologist 23 years. I've never seen bone tissue spontaneously sprout in the middle of a muscle, much less do it about 6 times and then arrange themselves in a symmetrical pattern. He said, this is very unusual to me.
Did you get X-rays of that? Did you keep those X-rays?
Oh, you bet.
Oh, good.
Yes, and I have them. I think they're on terrylovelace.com.
Okay, good. I'm sure they are.
You can, yeah, you can go in there and see them.
Are
and
they?
I had a little bit of trouble getting them too.
Oh, yeah.
They won't give me my X-rays. And,
Did anybody ask you questions about that? Did anybody come to you and say, all right, buddy, I mean, come on, what happened here?
No, not a soul.
Okay.
Not a soul. I think, though, if I hadn't been persistent, I don't think I'd ever seen those X-rays.
I don't think so either.
They'd ever given them to me.
Right. Good for you.
And, well, you know, it took, I had to go down and see the custodian of records, and I told him, I said, you guys got 72 hours. I want my records. It's been almost 3 months. If you don't have them in 72 hours, I'm going to file. I know how to do this. I'm going to file a complaint at the United States District Court in Dallas, and I'm going to take you as the custodian of records to court and make you show cause why you shouldn't be held in contempt. Get an order to give me my X-rays.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to work. So I got my X-rays the next day. But yeah, I think they would have liked to have kept them. They didn't post them. I get. When you're a veteran, you can go. If you get your medical care from the VA, you can go online and see your lab results, your X-rays, everything.
You can now as a civilian too, but the records I'm looking for go back to 07 and back farther than that a little bit. But I was not in the military, so I don't know if I can even get them now. Hopefully I can.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll find out.
It depends on the records retention policy. Who knows?
Yeah. So, okay. So now, to this day, what's going on with you with this?
Well, I really should put this in proper perspective. And that is that what happened to me in 1977 was incredible, frightening, but it wasn't my first encounter with non-human entities, as I like to call them.
Mm-hmm.
In my book, I talk about when we're children, we name things like a child would, and I had years of terrifying what I thought were dreams. My parents told me they were dreams. I knew they couldn't be dreams. And this sounds a little nuts, I know, but as a child, I would see in the middle of the night, I'd wake up and these 4 little circus monkeys would step out of the shadows. Now, and I thought they were kind of comical at first. And the one closest to, there were always 4 of them, and the one closest to my head would hold out a monkey paw in my direction and say, "Come with us, Terry." And I think sometimes I did.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I got scared and screamed for my parents. And one of the nightmares that haunts my sleep to this day is I'm 6 years old again. I'm laying in bed in St. Louis, Missouri, and the monkeys are in my room, and this one holds out the paw. But in the dream, it's not a paw at all. It's 4 long, gray, ugly fingers, and I just slip out.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Well, they probably were. They probably made you look as if I was an owl, or you could have been 3 little chickens, or I mean, they could have done anything to make you feel calm, not to see their true identity. That's what the grays.
That's exactly what I think.
It's exactly what went on there. I guarantee it.
Yeah, they appear in the way that the child will find most benign.
Mm-hmm.
And in these 1,600 letters from people that I got, emails from people, I've had people tell me that they've had glowing orbs of light in their room, owls, lots of owls, deer. One kid that I talked to him and his mother down in El Paso, had a possum that would appear in his room. It would come through the screen. He said it's a ball of white light, and then it would turn into a possum. But this possum walked on 2 legs like a man and spoke with him to his mind without saying any words. It was telepathically. And
I had a gal that told me her story as a child, and it was little bunnies, and they'd hop all over and and they'd get group up together in threes and twos, and it's really weird. Just like those Greys did, those little Greys, So I mean,
Yeah.
and then she wouldn't remember certain things, and then but she'd had some violent stuff happen, but it was very weird story. But I don't care how weird they are. It happened to them. Who am I to say it didn't happen? This is my show.
Yeah.
Say it. Maybe it happened to you like that. I mean, your story is very familiar with other abductees.
Boy, I'll tell you that there's truth in that, because I get letters from people all the time. I emails from people all the time saying, I read your book and it's weird. It kind of jogged my memory about what happened to me when I was 6 or 4 or whatever. And what I did was I'm kind of a data-driven guy. I mean, I took all these stories that people sent me, and I tried to categorize them on a spreadsheet, on an Excel spreadsheet, looking for commonalities.
Right.
And I found some really unusual commonalities.
On that note, hang on to that. It's the top of the hour. We're going to go into another hour. So I'm going to give a phone number on my ID again. We'll get right back to that. Okay. So remember that data. All right. Thank you, my friend.
To call UFO Talk Radio, the Glenn Larry Show, deep in the dark desert of Nevada, call 702-874-1114. North of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. West of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. And south of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. And east of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. First-time callers, call 702-874-1114. And if you just want to talk to the Glenn Larry Show, call 702-874-1114. Now, broadcasting live from deep in the desert of Nevada, K-Ghost Radio presents UFOTalkRadio.com with your host, Larry Glenn Anderson, Glenn Larry. Now, back to Glenn Larry.
And we are back. Boy, I'm with Terry Lovelace. The last hour we had a great talked about his experience and stuff in his book, and it's coming out and what have you. But we're into the part of where we talk about the data that he was coming up with, thinking about all how this has come up and what have you. To recap, this gentleman was taken by a UFO ship, as they may say, him and his buddy. And if you get a chance, please go to his site. And I do have him on the air right now. Terry, you with me?
I'm here.
Good. I still did push the wrong button. Thank God. And it's the name of the book again, please.
Incident at Devil's Den. That's the original. And then I have a follow-up book, a sequel that I wrote called Devil's Den, The Reckoning. And in The Reckoning, all these emails and correspondence that people sent to me telling me about their experiences. I picked 30 of what I thought were the most compelling stories out of the 1600s.
Right.
I included their stories in the back of the book, The Reckoning.
Great.
So, I was just about to say that I wanted to put these things on a spreadsheet and look for commonalities, and I discovered some that I think are interesting. I had a bunch of people that told me that they had a dream, a vivid dream, at age 4, 5, 3, and that this dream, irrespective of their age, they could be 80. This dream is as vivid with them today as it was when they had it. And it might be just nonsense. It might be something to do with family members
Mm-hmm.
or, but whatever this dream is, they can't remember anything else from age 4. They can't tell you anything about Christmas or where they went on family vacation or who was at their birthday party. That's all gone. But this stupid little dream is still with them. And those are the people that have been experiencing stuff for a lifetime.
Right.
So, as a matter of fact, I didn't have a single experiencer that didn't have a very lucid, real dream from their early childhood. As a matter of fact, they sent me, a story about being abducted or about having an encounter with either ET or with UFOs or both. And they didn't mention it. I would send them a letter and say, by the way, as a child, did you have any strange dreams? And that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to lead them, and they responded and said, well, yeah, now that you mentioned it, I did. And those are the people that seem to have a lifetime of contact.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I bet that's going to resonate with somebody out there.
Oh, I'm quite sure of that. Uh-huh. Boy, thinking about back on some of the times that some of the stories I've had on the air of folks telling me just comes to light. Now, are you going to be going to any of the new conferences coming up? Hopefully, if they open up this pandemic thing.
If they open up, I'm going to be at the virtual Ozark conference, and it's Contact in the Desert.
Good.
But I went to, and I've been pretty diligent about, not traveling unnecessarily.
Right.
And I was invited to speak at this conference in Sedona 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I haven't been out of the house in a while.
Right.
I think I'm gonna go to. So my wife and I went to this conference down in Sedona, and it was lovely. It was lovely to see, the people there in person and feel that energy. And so yeah, I'll be glad when we're all back, doing this for real and
right.
In person.
Yes, I agree. Oh, I miss it a lot, to tell you the truth. But as in radio, we're all over the place, and I really do enjoy the guests we have on, and especially this subject matter. It's one of my favorites, and that's kind of the realm we go. And so now at this point, have you had your legs looked at since then, or what's going on now?
Yeah, that deserves a long explanation too, or at least I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, just do that.
And when I saw those X-rays, that was really kind of a watershed moment for me. Like I said, it validated that they put their hands on me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what these things were in my leg, but I knew this: I wanted them out of my leg yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I want them out.
Yeah.
So, the doctor sitting in the ER said, go see a surgeon. Make an appointment to see a surgeon here.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I saw a surgeon. Surgeon loved the X-rays, by the way. Popped them on the box, and he wanted to look at my leg for a scar. And when he didn't find a scar, he's like, "How did this thing get in your leg?" I'm like, "Beats me, doc. I don't know." And I said, "Just what I'd like you to do, if you could do this for me, I'd like you to remove it from my leg, but do it under a forensic protocol, and do it via a chain of custody, so it passes directly from your hands into an envelope with your seal, with your signature on it, or at least initials, date and time, and then pass to the hands of either me if I'm conscious or my, somebody that's in the operating room to receive it. So that there's an established chain of custody, so nobody can go back and say, oh, well, you switched that,
Right. Or I lost it.
Yeah, I lost it. Right. So he's like, yeah, no problem. He says, I take bullets out of people all day long, and I'm familiar with the protocol. So he's like, yeah, no worries. And then he's looking at my chart, and he's like, oh, I see you've had 3 heart attacks. And a bypass, and a stent. And he says,
Well, you
I
sound
really-
just like me.
Hey, good.
Scare me here, Terry.
Yeah. So you might be familiar with this. The surgeon said, just give me a cardiac clearance letter.
No,
Go to
good
your
luck.
Cardiologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck is right.
Right.
And the cardiologist explained it to me like this, because I'm like, look, I want this thing out of my leg. She's like, hey, look, I got 50,000 other vets out there that got metal in their leg from Korea or Iraq or wherever, and they want it out yesterday too. But the standard of care in this, if it's not causing problems, let it lay.
Yeah.
Because it's a risk versus benefit analysis. The risk of infection,
Right.
and the risk of something going wrong during the operation or through anesthesia is just not worth the gain for
Right.
having this thing out of your body. And so I ended up seeing 5 cardiologists, and I got the same answer. So I thought, I can maybe talk my way into this, right?
Right.
But no, not a chance. It's a liability issue. I
Yeah.
understand. I should understand. So I decided to make a trip to Tijuana and have a Mexican surgeon remove them. And in October of 2017, I'm working on this book. I'm still about 4 months away from having it done. Well, I'll jump ahead a bit. So I said I was going to make the Cliff Notes version. In the 3rd week, actually, it was November 17th. I got the X-rays in my desk.
Right.
I woke up at my normal time, and my legs hurt a lot. And I pulled back the sheets, and I've got puncture wounds at the top of each leg, and they're deep, but there's no blood, and it's just sore as can be, and it hurts to walk, and I think I have pictures of these on the website too.
Mm-hmm.
They were at the top of both of my legs,
and
there's bruising in like a floral pattern around the puncture wound. And the bruising didn't come out for about 36 hours. And I told my wife, I said, I knew somehow, I said, they came and they took that thing out of my leg. They knew that I was going to go down and have a surgeon remove it.
They know.
Tijuana, and they took it out of my leg.
Mm.
And she said, well, you got to validate that. You got to go get an X-ray. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And my mind is racing. Where do I go to get an X-ray? And then I thought, I know where to go.
Right.
I'll go see the local chiropractor, And what I did was, thankfully, I took copies of my X-rays on copy paper with me, and I had them rolled up in a tube, and I had them in my hand. And I sat in the doctor's office because I didn't have an appointment. I waited, 40 minutes. And this chiropractor calls me back into his office, and he says, okay, where do you hurt? And I said, well, it's the top of my legs here. And I showed him the puncture wound.
Right.
And he said, well, were you in a car accident? How did you get this? And I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you, doctor. I believe that in 1977, while I was camping in an Arkansas state park, Ellen and I were abducted by aliens, and they put an implant in my leg.
You told him that.
I did. And what else would he say? The truth is always. And he said, well, all right then, And he's got me by the elbow, and he's walking me to the front door.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what? I know these guys look at 100 X-rays a week.
Yes, they do.
So I held these two X-rays on copy paper. I held those up in front of his face. And 3 feet from the door, he stopped. And he took them, and he looked at them, and he said, follow me. And he took me back into his office, and he shut the door. And his phone's ringing, and people are knocking at the door. And he puts the X-rays on copy paper down on his desk. And he kind of pushes them in my direction and says, tell me about this in the capsule version.
Yeah.
And I said, pretty much what I told you, Doc. They discovered this X-ray. They discovered this thing in 2012, and here it is 25 years later. And I think they came and took it out last night. I think it's gone. And he said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make you a deal. Because I told him I was writing a book.
Right.
And he said, I'm going to write you a slip for an X-ray. So that I don't have X-ray equipment here. We use a freestanding clinic just 1 mile down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, I'll write you a script for an X-ray, and I'll pay for it. Just promise me you won't use my name or the name of my clinic in your book.
Gosh, good. What did you find?
Well, I went down, I got the X-ray.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get back to the car. I got to the car, I pulled them out of that big envelope they give you.
Uh-huh.
It's a sunny day. I held it up, and sure enough, the thing above my knee is gone. So I took the X-rays, and I dropped them off at his office. And I thought, well, that's good news and bad news. But I felt kind of sad, really. I don't know what brought that emotion, but the chiropractor called me that night, and he says, well, you see your X-rays? And I said, yeah, I did. Looks like they came and they took it out. And he says, well, did you see they left you something? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, stop by the office. He said, these X-rays are yours. You can have them, but I want to show you something. So he showed me on the X-ray, right parallel with my femur, there's and they don't show up real well. There's pictures of them in the backup, Incident at Devil's Den, and I believe on the website. But it just looks like a white streak on X-ray film. If you, especially if you have a pair of reading glasses or a magnifying glass, there are two tiny wires, a little over 1/4 of an inch in length, parallel with one another, almost touching, but not quite. And they're just. And I asked him, I said, wait a minute now, if these things are 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder, intellect-wise, how could they be so in-depth as to leave these stupid wires in my body?
Right.
And he said, you don't get it, do you? They don't do anything on accident. He said, they just gave you an upgrade. He said, what you have in your leg now with those two little wires is probably the 2017 version of what they gave you in 1977.
Yeah. Amazing.
And I think he's probably right.
Boy. Yeah. I tend to agree with him. Well, it's for a life thing, my friend.
It is.
And people don't realize that. And maybe they're not to know or to realize that. They haven't had an awakening like you've had. So you had the experience. It's with you. You remember that part of it. Some get abducted and never remember anything. And then just little bits and things come out later on lives, and then they're 9 years old. They get most of the picture and they go, "Oh my God." I mean, I've heard these different stories.
Yeah.
I have one to tell, but not on the air. I would only tell it with a person like you that would understand. But it's I mean, it's for a real thing. Look, they're here. They've always been here. And the question is, what do they want? And how much do they want from us?
And that's the $1 million question.
They could take it all.
What's the agenda?
Yeah, that's the question. And does the government know about it? Of course they do.
Oh, I know they do. That's it. I was in when we got back to the base, we were hospitalized.
Mm-hmm.
And spent 3 days, 2 nights in the hospital. And on the second night that I was in the hospital, my evening came in to give me a shot. And when she opened the door and came in, these 2 guys in blue business suits followed her into my room. And there was an older guy about 50 and a younger guy in his 30s. And the older guy said to the nurse, if that's going to sedate Sergeant Lovelace, it's going to have to wait. We need to ask him some questions. And they pulled out their identity badges. They were from the Air Force Security Police, Investigative Branch, also known as the Office of Special Investigations, or OSI. So they were OSI special agents. And I immediately thought, oh my God, did we burn the forest down? That was my first thought.
We forgot to turn off the fire. I put out the fire. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, I didn't pour water over
that. Right.
My God, could I maybe burn down the forest?
Yeah.
So I'm not scared. I mean, I've never had any interaction with law enforcement.
Right.
This time. And this guy come over and, was tough and gruff and intimidating. And, I scared me to death.
Right.
But having worked as a prosecutor and knowing a little bit about law enforcement in those days, in retrospect, I think it was mostly theater. I think he was there to scare me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of this, there were two of them. The younger guy, the captain, left, and it was just me and this major, the older guy, in the room. And he got down right next to my ear, and he had this Alabama accent, and he says, "Son, I know, and you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something while you were out there, and I think you know what I'm talking about."
Whoa.
And I didn't know how to answer. I mean, we had made this pact not to disclose this.
Whoa.
And when I didn't answer him, he got a little more stern, and he says, "Oh, I know you know what I'm talking about." And he said, "All I want to know is how many pictures of it did you take?" And without thinking, I blurted out, "Sir, I never took a picture of it, I swear."
Of it, I swear.
And he just smiled. He knew.
Gotcha.
He knew that I knew. I knew that he knew.
Yep.
We were both on the same page. I don't know how he knew, but when he walked into that room, he knew. And he said, "Well, I'm going to need your camera and your film." And I said, "Sir, I didn't ever take a single picture. Don't have anything to give you." But they knew. They absolutely knew.
The hospital probably alerted them for who you were, and with everything that's going on with you, they know that's been done before and happened to others, and now you are laying there in that hospital bed, and you're just ready for the pickings. Let's get the story, and they got you, yeah. And what about your was it Toby or your
Toby?
Yeah.
My friend Toby.
How's he doing? I mean, have you heard from him at all?
That's an interesting story. I saw Toby one last time. They ordered us to have I was ordered to have no contact with him. He was ordered to have no contact with me. And if you know, there's a guy named Robert Hastings who wrote a famous book called UFOs and Nukes.
Right.
About 15 years ago.
Right.
And he's testified in front of the Senate a couple times. And he knows about my story, and we talk maybe once a week. And he told me back when this first got started, he said, "Yeah, it's standard procedure. If you're on active duty and you're a couple guys standing together and you see something," and he said, "Now I'm not just talking about just seeing a silver disc dart across the sky." He says, I'm talking about something a little more intimate, something like on a scale of what happened to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's common practice. They won't let the two communicate with one another. They bust up the band. They cut Toby orders to go to Japan at light speed. I mean, he was gone in weeks. And I was told by the hospital commander, "You're to have no contact verbally and writing, not through third parties. You're not to give him anything. He's not to give you anything. If you run into him at the base exchange, you're immediately to turn around and walk in the opposite direction," and just on and on and on. And I left it with, that's an order, Sergeant. If you disobey my order, there'll be consequences. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I understood consequences, but the reason." But of course, I was hurting pretty bad then. I really didn't much care, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I did want to see my son one last time. And it was odd because I can't explain this. I can't reconcile it, but I wanted nothing to do with the guy. And here he was, my best friend, earlier. And it's like, I don't even want to see him. But I felt like we worked 3 years together. I felt like I had a duty to stop by, shake his hand, and wish him well. And we were coming home from the grocery store. We both lived he only lived 4 blocks from me. And I told my wife, I said, "Cruise by Toby's house. I want to run in and tell him goodbye." And she's like, "Oh man, don't do that. These OSI people scare me." And I said, "I know, they scare me too." And, but she relented and dropped me off, and I ran up to the door, same door I'd walked through 100 times before. And I did what I always did. And I knocked 3 times real loud, and I opened the door because it was never locked. And I said, "Hey guys, it's me." And I walked in, and Toby's wife walked past me, and she was carrying a lamp or something. They were packing. They were getting ready to go. And she gave me a ugly look and said, "You're not supposed to be here." And I said, "I know that. I'm not here to confront anybody. I just want to wish you guys well and say goodbye to Toby." And she didn't answer me. She went into the garage. But Toby had heard our exchange, and he came walking around the corner. And when he did, I was shocked because he was one of these guys that was always real meticulous about his appearance.
Right.
You know, he was a guy that always had a haircut that was within regs and his shoes shined, and, you know, uniform pressed. You know, I was the slob of the duo, you know, but he was always, I mean, even if we were playing volleyball or barbecuing or something, he always looked good. And
right.
He came around that corner, and he had his hair was all sideways, and he had a growth of beard and a dirty T-shirt on and boots with no shoes, and I'd never seen him like that. And it was awkward. You know, I thought it would be, what's the word they use? Closure. I thought
Closure,
it would give me some measure of peace to see the guy again. And I felt like it would be appropriate to, you know, just embrace the guy, pat him on the back, you know, and say, you know, really appreciate working with you. Because we were good friends. Our wives were friends. But it didn't work out that way. It just felt
I wonder,
incredibly awkward.
I really wonder this. If the time you were in the hospital at a certain time, a certain person came in and did some hypnosis to you. And also Toby had this done to him also, that you're not, do you like each other anymore? Which causes, you know, a distance from each other. And then as time goes on, he goes on to somewhere else and blah, 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 whatever. But how much did Toby go through? Not just yourself. How much did he go through on the side?
Toby went through a lot.
Yeah.
I'll tell you his whole story real quick.
Yeah.
But he walked up to me, and I didn't embrace the guy. And he was about 6 inches shorter than I was. And I held out my hand to shake his hand. At the same time, he held out his, and we missed. And we kind of did this inelegant kind of handshake. And I said, yeah, I know you're going to Japan. I just want to wish you well. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. And he's standing like 3 inches from me. He's looking up at me. And he just said, "It happened, didn't it, Terry?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind." And with tears in his eyes, he says, "Yeah, but why us?" And I could smell liquor on his breath. That was really out of character for this guy. This guy was not a drinker. And I said, "Man, I don't have a expletive clue."
Right.
And I just felt this wave of panic. And I turned around and I ran out of the house and got back in the car. And we left. So it didn't give me the closure I was looking for. That's for darn sure.
Well, gosh. And do you know where he's at today by chance?
Well, I do. His wife called my wife in the early 80s when I was in law school.
Okay.
And calls her. She calls him. Toby's wife calls my wife and says, a real quick story that she and Toby separated when they were in Japan.
Oh.
And she took the kids and came back, and then they divorced. And she went to live in L.A., one of the little towns, you know, around.
Right.
Toby got discharged from the Air Force early. I don't know the circumstances of his discharge, and I won't make any assumptions. But she told us that he had a problem with alcohol. And she said that, you know, he didn't go to bars. He didn't even drink during the daytime hours. But he was scared to death to go to bed at night. He was afraid to lay down and shut his eyes.
Oh, gosh.
And she said that, you know, 2 or 3 hours before bedtime, he'd start slamming hard liquor. And that
cope
way
with
he
it.
could just
To cope
pass
with all
out.
that. Yeah, to cope with what had happened. Oh my gosh. And is he still with us or not?
No, he passed away September 4th, 2007.
Wow.
So it's an opportunity lost. I mean, I would like to have reconnected.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I mean, I've heard so many people say, like, I think they're demons. These are demons. This all didn't happen. These demons put this in our minds and what have you. But the storyline is not like the demons. That you hear from the paranormal, more or less. It's a whole different scenario. But I mean, I don't think they're here for our goods, to tell you the truth. I do not.
I think they're here for their benefit.
Yes,
number
I do.
one,
Mhm.
first and all, first and they're here for their own interests, their own agenda. As far as them being demons, no, I don't think so at all. I think there's a distinction between what's paranormal and what's supernatural, and I believe it's supernatural.
Benevolent type of thing, or
these things that I don't believe that they're demons at all. I had a lot of people tell me that. Not, I had coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, I had a cousin living in northern Arkansas, nowhere near Devil's Den, but in northern Arkansas, and same age as I am. And when he was a kid, he was being visited by clowns, little clowns, 3-foot tall clowns in his room at night. And he slept in a room with two brothers that were twins that in bunk beds. So there's 3 of them in the room, and the twins never saw or heard a thing. And it was the same drill as what these monkeys did. What the lady went and the kid down in El Paso with the walking possum. It's the same kind of deal. And but his parents, my parents were not really super religious, so I didn't hear that from them. They just thought it was too much, watching too much Space Ghost on TV.
Right.
But my cousin Gerald, when I tell his story in The Reckoning, because his story needs to be told.
I want to hear a little bit about that. I got to go to commercial real fast, and we'll be back with Terry Lovelace. Thank you.
You ignore the signs, so you enable.
You don't want to sound like a hypocrite, so you enable. You don't want to alienate your child, so you enable.
But if you think they're trying drugs, you shouldn't be afraid.
You are the parent.
So you are able.
You are strong.
So you are able. There are others just like you.
So you are able. And we can help.
So you are able. Get help at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
You ignore the signs, so you enable.
You don't want to sound like a hypocrite, so you enable.
There's no typical meth user. I was from an upper middle class family. Meth is terribly addictive. My first time using it, I was hooked. There was no turning back. I lost my job and I was homeless. I never thought I'd see my family again. I have a great fear of meth because it took so much of me. I mean, it took everything. Meth took over my soul.
Visit our website at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
And we're back with Tony Lovelace on UFO abduction. It happened to him, happened to a lot of folks. And he's going to tell me some more stories. How they come to you sometimes at night. Is it really them? Or is it the bunnies? Is it the little clowns? Is it the owls that you see at night when you're... What was it? Was it an alien? Little gray guy?
Absolutely, it was an alien.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was an alien.
But
as we said earlier, they appear to us in a form most benign.
Yep.
And it was kind of a joke within the family, and that I saw these little circus monkeys, and my cousin Gerald saw a clown.
Yeah.
So my sisters made that connection, and they're like, well, the circus theme must suit these things. And But my parents never thought that this was anything paranormal or UFO related. They thought it was just bad TV habits and an overactive imagination.
Right.
Poor Gerald, on the other hand, his family was Southern Baptist, and they dragged this poor kid into church, and they prayed for him, and they told him that these were demons. And I was 8 years old. His family would come up. That's how poor people used to vacation. Is they'd go to a relative, and then the relative would feed and water them, and they'd play cards and have a nice time for a week. And then next holiday, you'd go to their house and they'd return the favor.
Right, of course.
So
I remember those days.
Yeah, So I saw him every summer, and the last time I saw him, he was 8. He was a wreck, and he told me, he said, the pastor told him that, sometimes we think ugly thoughts, and that's what brings them demons in. And this kid was blaming himself. He's like, I brought this on. And I'm like, no, don't buy that. This isn't your fault. But I don't know if I don't think he believed me. But, and the kid took his life when he was 19 years of age.
Oh, God mercy.
So,
boy.
Yeah. Just dealing with this stuff.
There's a guy here who lives in Vegas, and he is always being taken. And you can't live a normal life. And I mean, how do you cope with that? Boy.
That's a good question.
And maybe you're unfortunate that they don't let you know you're taken. And, maybe it happens more than we think it happens.
Well,
to most of us.
That's a problem. That's a problem. I think that the only reason I'm able to deal with this, and process it in a positive way is because I do have some memories of it. I know what happened to me. That's the people I feel sorry for, are the people that they get taken and they don't even know it. And, I think that these things can, show us screen memories and projections, but in our subconscious somewhere buried, there's trauma from being in contact with these non-human entities.
Yeah.
And, it may take 40 years, but that's going to seep up to the surface into your conscious mind. And it's going to manifest in unhealthy ways, like alcohol abuse, drug abuse, all kinds of negative.
Could go into even mental illness. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a gift to be able to have a memory of it. At least I know.
But the more that gets out, like your books, like yourself, that's so important because it's therapy. Teach a lot of people, help them. Now there's unbelievers, non-believers, what have you. I don't care. Whatever you believe is what you believe. I believe this is for real, folks, and that's where I'm going with that. I'm open to everything. It's my station, K-Ghost Radio, FM 101.3. UFO Talk Radio, of course, Area 51 Talk Radio. We have them all out there. We're not white. We're on Art, YouTube, Facebook, everything. So, I mean, and we're going to get more. We'll be on more of those. They call podcast, rebroadcast. I guess what they call it, podcast, whatever. But it's working, and it's the whole thing's getting out. And it's like I say again, like it's people like you, Terry, that have a great story, a great thing. I mean, it's happened to you, and testimony, I shall say. Yeah, I wish you all the best. And how can people get your book, get everything you're writing? Let them know. Will you please, Terry? Go ahead.
I will. Incident at Devil's Den. But both of my books are on Amazon. They're only on Amazon. So Incident at Devil's Den is available in a paperback that has some cool photographs in the back of it, and then a Kindle version. And also, I did an audio book in my own voice. I wanted it to be my read the book. And that's available through Audible or on Amazon. You can get it too.
Great.
The second book is Devil's Den: The Reckoning, which was #1 in new releases. Both my books were #1 bestsellers on Amazon, I'm happy to say. They were well received, and I'm grateful for that. I just had 550 550th review on Incident at Devil's Den. So 4.7 out of 5. So I'm happy. I'm happy that it's been well received.
How many pages is that book?
Hang on, I got one right.
It's an odd thing to ask,
Incident
brother.
at Devil's Den is relatively short. It's 226 pages.
Okay, good. Nice
And
read.
The Reckoning. What's that?
It'll be a nice read. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's an easy read.
Yeah.
And then The Reckoning is a little longer. There's a little more to it. It's 366 pages.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Great pictures and illustrations in it too.
Good. The fun stuff is that you take an airline, if you take a plane ride or what have you, or you're riding the back of a car, you can sit and read those books and really enjoy them, get into them. That's great. Short reads are nice, you know.
Yeah, I like that when I fly. I
Yeah.
like to have a series of short stories.
I found many books on airplanes. And they're very good, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
God, Terry, I thank you so very much for being on my station and on K-Ghost Radio and UFO Talk Radio and all of them, the LJ Broadcasting. If you go to my website, everybody, it's the Glenn Larry Show or either K-Ghost Radio. We'll have them all up there. You'll have a rebroadcast of this show and you'll hear it in the archives. And please get his books because it's opening eye to you. Trust me. There's stuff in that book he hasn't even talked about tonight. So please get to those books and read them and share them with friends. And again, I do thank you so very much, my friend. And I hope we catch it.
Thank you for this platform and this opportunity to talk to your awesome audience. I appreciate that very much.
Well, you're a great man and be well, my friend. Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Best wishes. All right.
Bye-bye. Okay, there we were, everybody. I told you it was going to be a good show, which it was, and I'm so very happy to have that gentleman online. What a great book! I mean, I read most of the other one. He had the first one out, so I'm going to get the second one, and that's my plan. And I hope that you go to the websites that he has up there. And we're going to cut this off now. We do thank you so very much. I am Glenn Larry, and like I say, be well, have fun, play well together, and well, life is fun if you make it fun, and life can be bad if you make it. But as you take your choices in life and travel along the way, the goodness of life, that's where we want to be. Yes. Thank you.